starting with the great name of Almighty Allah, who is the most gracious and most merciful. Today, the topic of the presentation is stone and its classification. Stone, the hard, solid, non-metallic mineral matter of which rock is made, is called stone. So, stone is the hard, solid, non-metallic mineral matter, and mineral means inorganic substances that occurs in the nature. Now the rocks, the stones are obtained from the rocks. Basically, stone is the natural material of construction that is obtained from quarry. So, site or the place from where the stones are obtained is called quarry, and the process by which we get these stones is known as curing. So, next is the classification of the stones. Rocks from which stones are obtained for building purpose are classified into the following three different ways: A. Geologically, B. Physically, and C. Chemically. A. Geological classification. Now, geologically classification depends upon how the rocks were originally formed. Physically, the classification depends upon the physical composition or the what its structure is. Now, the chemical classification, it depends upon its chemical composition. So this is how these stones are classified. Now one by one I will discuss these all. A. Geological classification. Geological classification is further categorized into three. Number one is igneous rock, number two is sedimentary rocks, and number three is the metamorphic rock. Igneous rocks. The rocks formed from the molten magma are called igneous rock. Now what happens that the inner layers of earth are at such a high temperatures that masses of silicates present gets melt. This molten mass is called magma, and when this molten mass is forced out on the surface of earth is called lava. When the magma mass solidifies into rocks, when it reaches the surface of the earth, it forms the rocks such as basalt and traps. These are basically extrusive igneous rocks. Extrusive igneous rocks are those rocks which are formed on the surface of when this molten magma solidifies when it reaches the surface of earth. And if this molten mass solidifies before reaching the surface of the earth, those rocks are basically known as the intrusive igneous rocks. For example, the granite. So basically, generally if we talk that the extrusive rocks and igneous rocks and intrusive igneous rocks both are formed from the molten magma, and simply we can say that rocks formed from the molten magma are called igneous rocks. So this was all about how the igneous rocks are formed. Now coming towards the sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks. The surface of the earth is subjected to the destructive actions of rain, frost, fog, and winds and other chemical reactions. And so because of these destructive agents, the earth's surface gets cracked or break up, which gets further broken up when carried away by the rainwater and rivers. In the journey of the rivers from the mountains to the sea, they carry with them the debris, and further when the rivers moves from mountains to the sea, the velocity goes on decreasing. When the velocity of the water decreases, that debris present in the river start to deposit. The heavy debris settles first and followed by the lightweight ones, and further the sand and the silt takes place in the also gets deposited, and those gets the property binding properties, and overall the layers are deposited, and they forms the layers of deposition, and further this process goes on for millions of years, and the layers and the with the in which period the deposited layers subjected to the huge pressure of the overlying layers as well as the pressure of the water, because of which the layers gets consolidated and forms the sedimentary rocks. So sedimentary rocks are also called as the aqueous and stratified rocks. Whereas if I talk about igneous rocks are also known as the primary rocks, eruptive rocks, or unstratified rocks. What is stratified and unstratified, that I will discuss later on, but now coming towards the metamorphic rock. So examples of the sedimentary rocks are the sandstones and limestones. Okay, so this was all about the sedimentary rocks. Now coming towards the metamorphic rock. Due to the structural changes in the earth, these igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks find their places deep in the earth where they are subjected to high temperature and heavy pressure. Because of the high temperature and heavy pressure, the original structure of the rocks gets changed, and which causes the changes in structure, in the texture, or in mineral composition, or maybe both. This results in the formation of the new type of rock that is known as the metamorphic rock. So the rocks, this was about the this is all about the metamorphic rock. Now its example is the gneiss, quartzite, marble, and slate. These are the example of the metamorphic rock. Or simply we can also define the metamorphic rock, the rocks formed due to alteration of original structure due to heat and excessive pressure, or called metamorphic rock. Now coming toward the second classification, that is the B, physical classification of rocks, which depends upon the physical structure of the rocks. Okay, so physically rocks are classified under two headings. Number one is the stratified rock, and number two is the unstratified rocks. Stratified rocks are those rocks which can be converted into the thin slabs. Okay, so they basically show the distinct layers along which they can be easily split into thin slabs or parts. Okay, for example, the example of the stratified rocks are sandstone and limestone and slate. So stratified rocks are basically easily breakable. Now coming towards the unstratified rocks. Unstratified rocks are those rocks which do not show the sign of stratification. They are not easily changed into the they cannot be easily split into the thin slabs or layers. Okay, so for example, granite, basalt, and traps. So mostly the igneous rocks are the unstratified rocks, whereas sedimentary rocks are the stratified rocks. Okay, so and where if I talk about the metamorphic rocks may be stratified or unstratified depending upon the original rock that undergone the changes. Okay, now the coming towards the third classification, that is C, chemical classification of the rocks. Chemically, rocks are classified on the basis of the major or the chief constituent mineral, such as there are three headings coming under the chemical classification of rock. Those are argillaceous rocks, siliceous rock, and calcareous rocks. Argillaceous rocks, the rocks in which the principal constituent is clay or alumina. Okay, so example of this rock is slate and laterite. Siliceous rock where chief constituent is sand. Okay, and chemical we can say silica is in for example the quartzite and granite. Third is the calcareous rocks where the principal constituent is lime, for example marble stone and limestone. So these are the classifications of the rocks. So thank you for watching.